Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today about Jules's book, Shift AI for Agencies. So if you haven't met me before, I'm Emma Wharton-Love, I'm co-founder of Spark AI, and Jules here is my co-founder. Hi Jules.
Hi.
So at Spark AI, we specialize in AI business transformation and training for agencies. And I'm interviewing Jules today because last month he didn't write the book last month, but he published a book last month on our specialist subject, AI in agencies and business transformation around that.
Show it.
Oh yeah, I'll show it. Here we go.
There you go. Shift AI for agencies.
I'm glad I painted my nails last night. It came out at the beginning of last month. It went to #1 bestseller, Jules, I think, in 8 categories, as I was counting the categories.
That's right. We were Amazon #1 bestseller in advertising, in sales and marketing, in AI, in small business, and yeah, like 4 other leadership and something, leadership and computer science or something like that.
Oh, hi, Angus.
And a cat just walked by, and absolutely overwhelmed with the response to it.
Yeah, people are finding it super helpful. And it was featured in Design Week last month as well, which was really lovely to see. So we're just going to talk a bit about the book, why you wrote it, all that stuff. But this is live, so please ask your questions. Use the Hive mind, use Jules's mind while he's here live, and I'll keep an eye out. But I will ask a few questions along to begin with, and then as yours come in, we'll jump to some of those. Right. So to start us off, I guess the obvious question, Jules, why did you write the book right now? I mean, obviously you didn't write it last month. You wrote it slightly before then for it to be published last month. It takes a bit of time to get it printed.
Yeah, I started writing it back at the beginning of the year, actually, over the Christmas break a year ago. I started writing.
So tell us about that. Tell us why you wrote it. And in a world of AI, I witnessed this. You had to keep rewriting it, I guess, and updating it to keep it super relevant right up until the publication deadline, didn't you? So yeah. I'd love to hear why you wrote it and a bit about the process.
Yeah, so why I wrote it was, I think agencies, those of us working in agencies, are kind of right at the eye of the storm of generative AI. You know, since these tools became public 3 years ago, the launch of ChatGPT was almost exactly 3 years ago. You know, it's agencies that have felt the impact of these things first. These models are able to generate copy, they're able to generate imagery and generate video, and that goes to the very heart of how agencies have created value over the last 50 years. So it's really important that agencies understand this stuff. And why now? Well, I couldn't have written it earlier. Back in 2022, this time in 2022, when ChatGPT was released, everyone was working out what on earth this technology was. And by 2023, it was starting to get good enough that it was becoming genuinely useful for things. But it probably took until 2024 that we sort of started to understand what it really took to embed it in your work and what that means and how to use this technology effectively. So I don't think I could have started writing it much earlier than that, to be honest, because you need a little bit of the experience of seeing how it really gets deployed in businesses to be able to write it.
Yeah, definitely. And you talked about, and the subtitle of the book is that it's the biggest AI being the biggest change and it's digital, but and you talked about in the book, but it's happening much faster. What does that speed mean for agencies and agency leaders? And is that partly why you wrote the book as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of the questions we get from agencies are, you know, what platform should I be on? What tools should I be using for this? You know, what are some great prompts for this kind of work? And they're kind of missing the point a little bit with those things, because the technology is evolving so fast and the way that agencies are using it is evolving so fast. So what the book is about isn't so much what tool you should use and what a good prompt looks like, although it touches on those things. But more importantly, it's about how do you transform your agency with a technology that is evolving fast? What are the muscles you need to build in your organization to be able to use this stuff and roll with it as it evolves? And I think a great example of that is, I was on a call with one of our clients yesterday, and who use Google Gemini as their main AI platform. And Gemini released a big update just a few weeks ago, Gemini 3, and rolled out some new features. And we were exploring what you could do with Canvas mode in Google Gemini, where you can create little applications. You can create apps without any coding skill whatsoever. And we were just exploring what you could do with that. But because they had already got very good at prompting through our program, they'd already built out a series of Gemini gems, which are like custom GPTs to support different parts of their business. This was just the next thing that they could then move on to and start exploring. So I think it is about just evolving with the technology, understanding how these things change the way you work, and understanding how these things help you solve your client's problem in a different way. I think that's why this is the biggest change since digital, and why it's happening so fast, and why it can seem stressful.
Really, you're saying that because a lot of the book, and going through the contents again now, is as much about, I guess, business transformation and change management and behavioral change and all of that stuff. That's a sort of a bigger thing now than it was since digital.
Yeah, I think I think in America or Canada, I think they have this expression, skate to where the puck is going. I think it was said by Wayne Gretzky, who was a superstar ice hockey player. But it's become a sort of business metaphor now. And AI is very much that. It's about, skate towards where the puck is going, aim towards where the technology will be 5 years from now, not where it is right now, because by the time you get there, it'll have moved on. So it's about building the capability in your business to adopt and adapt this stuff. Not just, AI isn't something you're going to do once in your company. It's something you're going to build a capability to evolve with. And that's what the book's about.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I sort of want to acknowledge this time of year is a bit of a time for reflection, and the book is about like looking forward, how to transform your business with AI. And but I just want to look back for a minute as well, because like agencies have been on a huge kind of potentially emotional journey with AI over this last year, and I wrote about that actually in our newsletter yesterday. I wondered if you what that has been like from your perspective, Jules, working with our clients, what you've seen change, and perhaps we can just discuss a bit about what we think will set people in good stead for 2026.
Yeah. So obviously we talk closely with our clients during our engagements with them, but I also talk to just a lot of agencies in general, either companies that are curious about how Spark might be able to help them, or I speak to people at conferences and other things. So I get a lot of, we get a lot of information about kind of where agencies are on their adoption journeys and the things they're thinking about. And I think there has been a real shift over the course of 2025. I think back in January and February, everyone was feeling a little bit, or the majority of agencies were probably feeling a bit overwhelmed by all of this stuff. We'd seen big releases come from ChatGPT in December. They did their 12 days of shipmas, where they dropped new features every day for 12 days, which we covered on our podcast. And people were just thinking, how on earth am I ever going to stay up with this stuff? I think by the summer, people were getting more confident with this stuff. We were seeing a lot of agencies that had perhaps started to deploy platforms. They'd rolled out ChatGPT or Gemini to their teams, and we're encouraging people to use it. But then, they were then worried about the chaos they had unleashed a little bit. It's like, I don't know how anyone's using it. It's not being used consistently. Some people are leaning in and use it really well. Others aren't touching it. How do we actually get the value out of this stuff? And I think now the conversations we're having are, people are much more informed about what they need and where they want to go with it. They want to build some structure around it, have some policies in place, understand how to talk to clients about it, have training for their teams, start to build out the infrastructure for their teams and sort of operationalize AI and turn it from a personal productivity tool into a sort of organizational productivity tool. So they still might be struggling with how to actually do that, but they're asking the right questions.
Yeah, actually, and that makes me think, like, in the book you developed, or you codified what we use internally at Spark, like our AI maturity model, to show, where people are at on AI maturity journey, and like what typifies the kind of each stage and the things to do to get to the next bit. Like, what stage do you see that a lot of agencies are at, I guess, now compared to like the beginning of this year? And
Yeah,
then what
so those of you
thoughts?
that have, if any of you have read the book, or any of you who have been to one of our talks, have probably heard me talk about our AI maturity model. And we kind of have 4 stages that we've seen leading agencies go through, and we think most other agencies are going to follow a similar kind of path. And step 1 is experimentation, where it's a little bit like I described a moment ago, where it's a little bit of a free-for-all. There's AI use isn't really structured. It's down to individual enthusiasm, whether people are using it or not. Everybody's using it differently. Skill levels are very mixed. Some people not using it at all, others teaching themselves in their own time. And there's no coherent policy in place. And then we see people move to sort of augmentation, which is where you start using these tools to actually help you do your job better. You start to roll out structured policies. You have a bit of a plan for what you're doing. Perhaps you've mobilized an AI task force or project team, and you've got a way of talking to clients about how you use this stuff. You've perhaps invested in some training to upskill your team and that kind of thing. And then people generally want to start taking this to the next level, which is, okay, well, I've built out some custom GPTs, and I've built out some Gemini gems or whatever it might be. But actually, how do I actually reconfigure my processes to work in new ways and free up my team to focus on higher value stuff? And that's where we see people using automation tools like Zapier or Make or N8N, or the recently released Google Workflow Studio, which is a bit buggy at the moment, but we're having a go at it. And that's where you can redefine a whole process and change the way that your team work. And that starts to change how people spend their time. It starts to change the shape of your team, perhaps, and perhaps the skills that you want your team to have. And then finally, step 4 of that, we see where people really start to innovate with this stuff and solve their client's problem in a new way that's been unlocked by AI, and create new experiences for clients and their clients' clients. So that's the journey that everybody's on. A handful of agencies are kind of in that innovation space already, and I think we've profiled them on some other podcasts that we've done. But where most agencies are right now, a lot are still in the experimentation or that augmentation stage, starting to get into that augmentation stage, thinking about, what are the custom GPTs I need to build to support my process? How do I get my team skilled up enough on this stuff? How do I put some guardrails in place so that people don't use client data the wrong way, or stick stuff in tools where data gets shared and breaches our NDAs? How do we think about how it impacts our pricing? Where are we starting to see services get commodified because they've become easy with AI? We're seeing agencies, starting to move into that space. Perhaps not doing it all well, but at least sort of understanding kind of what they need to do, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you think? I think a lot of agencies are at the experimentation stage now. And what do you think? Like, are there like really concrete things that actually tip people from the kind of like, we're trying lots of tools, individuals are experimenting, into like realizing like we need this to work for the business? Like, what do you think are the things that kind of get people there?
The number one thing that separates the agencies that are making good progress with this stuff and the ones that I feel have got a bit stuck is simply taking it seriously. So treat your AI project like you would a client project. Give it milestones, give it deadlines, put somebody in charge, make them accountable for delivering it, understanding what progress needs to look like, and actually making the time to make it happen, and not assuming that everything else takes priority. AI isn't something that you do on top of your day job. If 2026 AI is your day job, and I think that's the change that the agencies that are succeeding with this stuff are making. They're carving out the time to really think through this stuff, to build out their AI infrastructure, to upskill their teams, to think about how they can change the way that they deliver projects for clients, and to change the experiences their clients have during those projects. And those are the ones that are thriving with this stuff. Don't make this something that sits in a PowerPoint deck. Put it in your project management system, the same as you would a client project. Give it tasks, give it deadlines, give it owners. That's how you make this stuff happen.
Yeah. And we often talk, and you talked in the book about how it's really easy just to like ask the wrong questions, like you don't know what you don't know. And like, what are some of those wrong questions and what should people be asking instead?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on this earlier, I think, where some agencies or some leaders are still a bit focused on, what platforms should I be on, or what do good prompts look like for this kind of work. And I think all of that stuff is evolving rapidly. And having a tool or having a prompt is just, it's just basic stuff now. I think what you do need to be thinking about is, how do I get my team working consistently using this stuff? How do I give my team the skills to be using this stuff in a sophisticated way? The power of some of these tools is really, really strong, but most people are still using it to redraft an email or help them write a paragraph of a proposal. I think thinking about what it means for data privacy, for your data privacy and your clients, thinking about what it means for intellectual property, the things you're creating with AI, where do they sit, who owns them, how do you transfer licenses over to clients at the end of a project? I think thinking about how you build repeatable workflows in your business, and how you make this, how you bring new people on board, how you get the right skills in your agency. It might be that actually it's not another copywriter or designer that you need, but it's actually someone who can help you string your AI workflows together and build the automations that are going to allow you to be more productive in the future. And I think ultimately it's thinking differently about your business. A lot of agencies define themselves by their outputs. They say, oh, we're a web development agency, or we're a performance marketing agency, or we're a brand consultancy. But actually, think about the problem you're really solving for your client. Your client doesn't really want to pay for branding, and they don't really want to pay for performance marketing. They want to pay for impact on their customers. They want to pay for engagement and sales. So how are you helping your client do that? Because you might find there's a different way to get there using AI.
Yeah, thanks, Jules. Sorry, I'm slightly distracted by some comments we're getting on YouTube, which are a little bit spicy. But so if anyone on LinkedIn or YouTube want to ask any questions along the way, please just add them in the comments, and we'll get to those. Jules, I wonder if we can get into some of the parts of the book and the kind of how-to parts of it as well. I know I haven't put this in in my bullet point questions, but I thought it might be helpful for people listening. So in the book, we talk about building your AI strategy, and we've talked about moving through the maturity levels. But where do people start in that? How do they start in building their vision and their strategy and their roadmap?
The best place to start with all of these things, we're not trying to encourage people to build technology agencies. You're still an agency that does brilliant creative and marketing work, but you've got to think about, well, how does AI help me do that better? So a framework in the book, and that we work through with our clients, is to think about how AI can make you even more brilliant at the things you're already good at. So what are the things, think about what are the things you want to be excellent at? What are the things you really want to be known for? What are the things that really make a difference to your clients? And then think through how AI might be able to support that. And because AI can help in three ways, really. Firstly, it can help augment the way that your team work. It can be an extra voice in the room. It can be help you be a thought leader. It can help you bounce ideas around. It can help you structure your thinking. It can help you communicate ideas more concisely and help you do your work a bit better. Secondly, there are some kind of tasks which it can almost automate. Not completely, but it can certainly get things done, some things done 90% more quickly. Like translation is a great example, and an easy example. Desk research is becoming a good example of that, where you can use the deep research tools in ChatGPT or Gemini to do what would have taken you a day in an hour. And then you want to think about, and what are the things where we can innovate? What are the things where this actually allows us to solve a problem in a different way? And a great example of that, one of the agencies we've worked with work in the food marketing sector, and they realized that they were sitting on an archive of 300 filmed interviews of chefs talking about how they choose the ingredients they work with, how they choose the suppliers of those ingredients, and how they put menus together. Hugely valuable information for any food brand wanting to market themselves into that audience. And AI allows you to transcribe all of those videos, put them into a vector database, and be able to have natural language queries about what it is. How do chefs think about different things? How do they make choices? What different segments are there within chefs? Does that correlate with the kind of restaurants they work at, or that kind of thing? And suddenly you've got a hugely powerful knowledge base, and that makes you very valuable to your clients. So that's the kind of thing we mean by innovating and solving a problem a different way.
Yeah. And that actually, Luke in the comments has asked a really interesting question. I don't know if you can see it, Jules, but I'll read it out. I'll read it out for everyone. So Luke says that he was speaking to a well-known agency recently, and what he found most striking was how their fear of being left behind by AI is what's driving them, but it's driving them to solve everything with AI, and like as soon as possible. And I guess the challenge is there, like, how do we communicate that strategy is actually essential when everyone feels like it's a race and they need to, do everything now, apply AI everywhere, and it's got to be, and it's got to be done with like the most technical solution ever, perhaps.
I think, So I think certainly AI needs to be purposeful in agencies. You need to think about what you want to use it for. But there's I think there's a few things going on here, Luke. I think firstly, yes, AI needs to be purposeful, and agencies should have a strategy about what they're trying to do with it. But it shouldn't all come from the top. There is a balance between sort of top down and bottom up here. The people doing the work are going to find ways of using it that you as a leader might not have thought of. But you need, as a leader, to be able to decide if that's a way you want them to be using it or not. So there is this mixture of kind of top down, these are the things we know we need to be good at and where AI can help. And there's going to be this bottom up, people doing the work, finding that it's actually really helpful in certain ways that perhaps you might not have considered. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is AI is brilliant at some tasks and very poor at other tasks, and understanding its strengths and weaknesses is important. Rather than trying to do everything with AI, do the things that AI, use it for the kinds of tasks that AI is good at. So AI tends to be good for the kinds of tasks where there's many different ways to give a useful answer. So it's great at writing copy often because no single word in that piece of copy is crucial. You could change each sentence, and as long as the meaning of that copy was correct, then it's a good answer, it's helpful. And the same with coming up with ideas or brainstorming or helping you step through a process, or all the other ways that having essentially another opinion in the room is helpful. AI is brilliant at. Where there is only one correct answer, where there's only one true way of answering something or getting something done, AI is quite weak. Generative AI is inherently probabilistic in the way that it works. You will never get the same answer twice. And for many processes, that breaks things. And for factual things where there is only one correct answer, it can often be wrong. So you need to apply these tools the right way with an understanding of what they're good at. And you only get that by doing it, by using it.
Thank you. Jules, I'm going to move us a little bit to looking forward to the next, like what's coming next, like our predictions for next year, which is so hard in this world. Like, what's the question you think? We've talked about like the questions that agencies have been asking in 2025, like the right ones, the wrong ones, like what we should be thinking about. Like, what do you think that will be in like another 6 months' time in summer? Do you think things are going to move as fast as they have this year, and the kind of, you know, the journey we've been on this year will be replicated next year? I think a lot of us are quite tired after this year. We've been, you know, doing the day jobs and we've been transforming with AI at the same time. Do you think it's going to keep going?
Yeah, well, certainly I don't think the technology is going to slow down anytime soon. There's no sign of that yet. I think we're going to see models continue to get better. I think the language models are, I mean, calling them language models is doing them a disservice these days. Gemini and ChatGPT, for sure, they can generate, you know, very competent text these days that's helpful. But actually, it's their other skills that are where they're moving forwards very rapidly. We're starting to see them become brilliant coding assistants for building apps for people who have never coded anything in their life before. We're seeing them being able to analyze data and financial information in ways that doesn't require an accountant anymore. We're starting to see them become very capable across a lot of domains, not just as chatbots, if you like. And then I think on the visual side, we're going to see the image and video generators continue to improve. And I think by the end of next year, or certainly during 2027, we're going to find AI generated video is becoming hard to distinguish from the real thing, and even to a trained eye. So what does the world look like when everyone can code an app, when anyone can create a video that looks like it was probably real? I think that's the evolution that we're going to start to go through next year. And obviously, to get your head around that, it helps if you've already built some of that muscle in your business for this year. You know, your team need to understand the capabilities of these tools. They need to be confident about how to spot where they're strong and where they're weak. You need to be having an open conversation with your clients about where you can use it, how you can use it, how you can add value using these tools for them. When AI is increasingly allowing more and more things to fall into that automation bucket, what's the value you're really bringing as an agency?
And how do you do that, Jules? Because I think you mentioned in the book as well that the tools that we're using today will look kind of quite quaint in 12 months' time. Like if you think about how fast things have moved in the last 12 months, like, and we've talked a lot about the kind of different pillars that agency leadership teams need to think across in their business. But I guess I wonder, like, what's the one thing you would do first to kind of, like, I guess I'm thinking about being able to keep everyone in that mindset of keeping on adapting through the next 12 months rather than feeling like you're playing catch up, so you can feel more in control of this.
So I think, sorry, my cat is actually being sick on the table next to me. I'll worry about that later. So, sorry if I was slightly off the mark there. Thinking 12 months ahead, you know, what is it that you need to be thinking about? What's going to change? I think we just need to be more aware of the kind of capabilities that these unleash. Like, everybody feels they're behind. Yeah. The truth is, only a handful of agencies are really building this stuff into the way they work yet, in any meaningful way. I mean, everybody's using AI, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's In fact, we did actually run a session the other day. Our team delivered a session where for the first time ever, we actually had someone who had never used ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot. But that's the first time that that's ever happened. So everybody is using this stuff. Most people are still using it in pretty simplistic ways and only tapping into 10% of what these things can do. There are some agencies which are properly exploiting them, but there's very few of them. In our surveys, we estimate it's around about 5%. So everybody feels they're behind, but the truth is the majority of people are still in largely the same place. I think if you're still experimenting, where it's all just down to individual initiative, nobody's had any training, you're not systemizing the way that you use custom GPTs and gens, like next year you will be behind for sure. I think businesses that are systemizing the way they use AI, having a clear way that goals that they're trying to achieve with it, are innovating a little bit with it and just carving out the time to do that, I think are going to be in a good place. That's where you need to be with this stuff. The time for experimentation is definitely over now if you want to be competitive this time next year, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Jules. And we've got another question that's come in. It says, this is a great question. You've referenced that AI isn't good for questions where there's only one factually correct answer. But we also said that it can be used for analyzing data and finances. I guess, can you, that doesn't sound, what's the right word? Doesn't sound
Yeah. I sound like I've contradicted myself. Yeah. Good to call that out. So where these tools can be misleading is they can get muddled, especially they can get muddled around sources of information. So when you're using these tools to understand things like, good examples we've seen of this is people trying to find quotes in interviews, for example. Give me a quote where, perhaps you've recorded this conversation between me and Emma, and you say, find me a quote where Jules talks about X. And it will create you a quote where I talk about X, but then you look through the transcript, that quote probably isn't quite right. And it's actually manipulated the data to kind of answer your question. It's tried too hard to answer your question. And it's not said, Jules didn't actually talk about that. They're getting better at it, but those kind of things do occur, especially when you've got multiple sources of data. Great way to test it. Go into ChatGPT or Gemini and say, and ask it what the benefits of smoking are. And it will give you quite a nice list of benefits of smoking, because it takes little pieces of different medical information and strings them together to find out the benefit for you, even though no doctor would ever say there was a benefit to smoking. So they can be a little too eager to please at times. Are they getting good at analyzing data and financial information? They are getting quite good. I used ChatGPT agent mode this last week to build a cash flow forecasting model for our business, and I gave it some of our costs. I gave it the invoices we were planning to send out. I gave it the costs we were expecting to come in. It built a pretty good cash flow model for me, and I couldn't test every cell, but certainly I tested 4 or 5 data points and they were all accurate. So I think, don't bet your business on the outcome of these things, but they can certainly get tasks done for you pretty well.
Yeah. So it's really about understanding their limitations. I mean, we are an AI business. We don't, we have an FD. As a human, so we don't, but we'll use AI to do a first pass analysis.
AI can certainly help you be a very informed client and help you ask the right questions and make sure you're getting the value out of others that work with you, rather than using them to do grunt work that AI can now do reasonably well itself.
Yeah, it helps us be a much better informed client on things that we wouldn't be so well. So Jules, I'm going to start rounding this interview off. I'm just looking for a nice last couple of questions in my list. So I'm going to talk about, going back to the book, you ended it really optimistically, which is a nice note to start to wrap this up on as well, like believing that there'll actually be more creative jobs in the future rather than the fewer sort of doom scroller kind of view. Like, why do you think that is?
I think that's true just because of my experience in the digital transition. And before focusing on AI, I had a long career as a photographer, as an advertising photographer. And I joined the industry just as it was transitioning from film to digital. And there were a lot of very experienced photographers, in their 40s and 50s, or later in their careers, who didn't take that transition well, who didn't really want to adapt to the new skills, thought it undervalued their work working digitally because some of the skills they'd spent a lifetime mastering suddenly weren't so valuable anymore. Understanding different film stocks and being able to light purely by eye without having to use a preview on the back of a screen to check their lighting and all that kind of stuff. They could just know which f-stop they needed to be at, what power the flash wanted to be at for a different effect and all this kind of stuff. They'd spent ages mastering all of that stuff. And suddenly all of that stuff was irrelevant or very easy to learn. And they felt it undervalued them. But actually it changed the kind of skills that photographers needed. Suddenly, as the technology made the technical aspects easier, autofocus cameras, being able to shoot multiple frames with no extra cost, being able to see the picture within a second on the back of the camera or on a computer, giving you lots of control over lighting and composition. Suddenly, the skill that you needed as a photographer was to be brilliant at interacting with the team around you, getting the best performance out of the talent in front of you, or the portrait sitter, or whoever it might be. Being able to visualize the picture in your head before you shot it so that you knew all of the pieces that you needed to put together. It put a premium on a very different set of skills. But what happened as well is actually the demand for photography went through the roof as it became more accessible. And actually there are 10 times as many people making a living from photography today as there were back in the early 2000s when I started out. So it's created huge amounts of demand, and people have taken up careers to fill that demand. And I think we're going to see the same now across the broader creative sector, in that, yes, AI lowers the barrier to entry for some kinds of creative work, but the skills it requires of a good creative start to change, just like they did for photographers. And because it's become more accessible, demand for it will increase. Companies that didn't think they could afford to work with an agency will start to work with one. Companies that have you can now deliver much more for the same budget than you could before, but you'll need people to do that. So personally, I think we're going to see more and more creative work moving into more and more creative jobs than there's ever been. Not all of those jobs will be in agencies, potentially. Companies will start to do things in-house. Small businesses can do them themselves, etc. But their roles become creative. So I think we need to think a little bit more broadly about what creative jobs are, where they'll sit, but there will be many, many more of them in the future, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, we did a research report around this topic a couple of months ago, which we published, and it's a free download on our website. There's a QR code here for it, where we did some research with the Industry Club, who are recruiters in creative industries, and it's a really detailed report where we interviewed 150 agency leaders about the skills and recruitment strategies that they're using now, like the skills they're looking for in people. So really eye-opening. I hope you find that useful. And before we finish, I should probably, Jules, actually put a QR code up for your book as well.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're interested in some of the things that we've talked about today, dive into all of this in much more detail in the book. It takes you through, firstly, how to get the most out of AI yourself, and then secondly, how to get your organization to get the most out of AI, and how to build a change program and lead your team through this new wave of technology. So do pick up a copy. It's available on Kindle or in printed copy if you prefer reading your books physically. So do get a copy.
Yeah, I really hope you find that useful. without further ado, thank you so much, Jules. It's been really, really insightful to have that chat. And everyone out there, if we don't talk to you before, have a really good break.
Yeah, and one final thing to wrap up on is everything in the book is based on the work that we've done with agencies over the last 18 months about helping them build AI adoption programs in their business. So if you read the book and you think those themes resonate with you and you think you might need some help to do it all, then do get in touch.
That's a pretty key thing that I should have probably said, Jules. So thank you. Right. Thanks, everyone. And happy Tuesdays. See you soon.